The bandwidth for this episode of the AR-15 podcast is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Welcome to episode number 81 of the AR-15 podcast. I'm your host, Reed Snyder, and with me today is my co-host, Anthony Hardy. This is the podcast about your favorite black rifle. This show is for you, whether you're building your first AR or you've been building ARs for years. There's something we can all do to take our black rifle to the next level. Anthony, how are you doing?
Doing good, Reed, man. How are you?
I am hanging in there. You know, our Irish, Scottish co-host extraordinaire is apparently off moving residences, so he's been out of pocket the last couple of days. I am going to start placing bets with the other FRN hosts as to whether or not he'll make it back. Living the life of Riley he is out there doing all things gun and AR related. I'm a little envious of the lifestyle he seems to be having. But
yeah, I know. He's spending a lot of time out at the range, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. But that's all right. He lives in Pittsburgh, and we all know what Pittsburgh like.
Haha, yep.
So down here in the South, where things are a lot nicer, I guess we're...
a lot hotter.
A lot hotter. We're having fun. But it doesn't get a whole lot colder.
I don't know.
Well, not where I am.
Hey, I had snow this year. Like, it lasted for like a day.
Well, that's the kind of snow we get. I gotta like that snow.
Yep.
Well, tonight we are taking a break from showing any new development on the AR build because our barrel is with the gunsmith having some work done to make it all that much better for our lucky winner. So I want to remind you that Brownells helps make this show possible. Don't forget that Brownells is there for you anytime you make a mistake, like when Jake shoots a takedown pin detent across his avocado green linoleum flooring and it skids under the cabinets.
One day we're going to have to work on Jake and those pin detents. I don't know what we can do about that. He seems to do that like every week or something. I'm not sure.
I don't know what it is. Maybe you should just stop fiddling with the ARs and let the professional amateurs handle it.
Professional amateurs? Are you getting paid enough to say that?
No, I am a professional amateur, though. I can tell you that much for sure. I am extremely good at being an amateur at what I do. In any case, I want to direct you tonight to go to the AR-15 podcast, which contains our discussion of the rifle that we're building for the giveaway, which was graciously sponsored by Brownells. So I put a link in the show notes in our Brownells spot so that you can go down to the AR-15 podcast and look at episode number 75 where we discuss at length the very, very wonderful rifle that we have put together or have compiled to be put together for some lucky winner out there. And right below that link is our link to the new giveaways tab on the AR-15 podcast website where you can go to register to win the Brownell-sponsored AR-15. So we want to let you know that we'd like you to shop for your AR-15 parts at Brownells, and you can go to ar15podcast.com/parts to get everything that you're going to need to build a rifle as wonderful as the one that we're going to build for one lucky winner. So that's going to lead me into this week's tip. You know, it's all about building this AR. And, you know, I think we started the AR-15 podcast with the idea of let's talk to people who love the AR-15 about what it's going to be like to build one, what they're going to have to do to build one, and all of these things that really kind of stretch people to a point of sometimes an uncomfortable position because they don't have what they feel is the skill enough to complete a project they've started or to solve a problem they've come across. So I want to kind of throw out this advice. I think that it is imperative for anybody who owns firearms, but more especially anybody who is going to build an AR, to find yourself a gunsmith. And I think that if you are going to find yourself a gunsmith, it is important to find a gunsmith who knows his way around a machine shop. Now, I'm going to qualify this. There are a lot of things I know how to do, and I would say that I can do them as well as any gunsmith. I can turn.
Is that, Reed, is that the lawyer side saying you can do it as well as any gunsmith?
No, I think that's my ego. My lawyer would say,
okay.
The following disclaimer, blah, blah, blah. But, here's what it is. I can turn a wrench. I can swing a hammer. I can hold a pin punch. I can do a lot of the very basic, simple things because any one of us can do them. Because that's not what makes a gunsmith a gunsmith.
Yep.
And I think by and large, many gunsmiths are out there in the world plying their trade, giving their services over to people. But I think there are probably a lot of people that don't themselves pass themselves, they do not pass themselves off as gunsmiths, but others do. I think you could probably go into a pawn shop that has a great inventory in firearms, and there's probably someone in the back that cleans them all, who gets them ready to get back on the showroom floor so they can be bought up, and someone is going to tell you that that's their gunsmith. He may not think he's their gunsmith. He may not even want him to say that. But, I think that there is this misconception that just because you know a rudimentary or a fundamental basis about the firearms that you're a gunsmith. And, no gunsmith would tell you that's the case. These people, these men and women are very, very well skilled, very well trained to ply their trade. And so it is imperative that you go and find a good one. And the machine shop component is kind of like the de facto determinant of a good real gunsmith and someone who is probably just very experienced at what they're doing. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you how I know. The gunsmith I use is a really good guy. He started off in a pawn shop. He was the guy that they referred to as the gunsmith in the back, who would, do some replacements of worn-out parts. He would do some cleaning. He would do some very fundamental, rudimentary things. And when he had an opportunity to really evaluate where he wanted to be in, the latter years of his career, he decided he really wanted to be a gunsmith. He took it upon himself to find a program. It's north of where I am in Oklahoma, and the people who he learned from were graduates of the Trinidad program, which is another fine gunsmithing institution. I think maybe even the oldest one in operation, or the longest operating gunsmithing school in America, and it's in Colorado. So he has a very in-depth body of training. But one of their principal projects is taking a Mauser action from a rifle, not just an action, but stripping it out of a rifle and conditioning it, getting it ready to be reassembled. Taking your bolt and welding on a new handle and all the modifications. He explained it at length. This 3-year project, this odyssey they go through to kind of get to the bottom of what it is to manufacture a firearm. It's an incredible education. It's one that I wish that I could undertake at some point. I know right now it's not something that's feasible. I've still got kids I'm going to have to get through college. I don't know if they're going to be happy with me if I decide to change careers. But
oh, come on, Reed. They can pay for college on their own, right?
Well, I keep telling them that. My 3-year-old says, "Daddy, I want to watch movies," so no. Find yourself a gunsmith. Find one that is classically trained. And I think that is going to help you with any of those moments you run across a piece of work where you're just not sure if you should do it yourself. And, I think we always trust our guts. We always try to be cognizant of where we are skill level-wise, and I don't have any problem admitting to myself that it's time to put it into the hands of a professional. So, tip of the day, tip of the week, take that for what it's worth, and we'll turn around next week and come at you with some more information. But right now, let's turn to our main topic. You know, this is episode 81, and I would have to say, by and large, we really have never covered in one comprehensive show all of the ways that we have seen or that we have heard of for an AR to fail. And, you know, here's the thing. We want to build these. We want to go have fun with these. But sometimes things go wrong. And, you know, I think for anybody that has never experienced any of these failures, just having a preliminary understanding that things can go wrong is enough to set the stage for success in the face of a little bit of adversity. So let's talk about these in terms of operating failures, ammunition failures, and catastrophic failures. So operating failures is where we're going to start. And I think this is really a very fundamental, very basic, simple component of running your AR. And so I think it comes down to two things: running it dirty and running it dry, or any combination of the two.
Yep.
So, Anthony, tell me what you found out in your your investigation on the ideas of running dirty and running dry.
Well, you know, it's, as most of these topics are probably going to be as we go through these, everybody and their brother has an opinion, and we know how opinions are. I'm not going to go into that one. But if you're going to run if your rifles run dirty, most commonly I'm seeing anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 rounds before you start having any real failures. When I'm looking at what people are saying now, of course, how reliable that is, I don't know. I know I've never had a failure due to running my rifle dirty, and I'm not exactly the most diligent when it comes to cleaning my rifle. So we all know why it's going to fail. I would assume we all know why, but you're going to have a buildup of carbon inside the rifle, which is going to cause things to not function right. The tolerances in there are not super tight, but apparently they're tight enough that if you do get carbon buildup in there, you're going to get some friction buildup, and you get things that don't move correctly, and you either will have a cartridge that can't eject properly, or the bolt carry group's not going to come forward properly and strike the round to fire off. So most people say, well, if you're going to run dirty, you need to run wet, which will help offset some of that buildup and keep things running smoothly. Would that be what you would say is correct, Reed?
You know, I would say that every opportunity I've had to witness an AR just kind of grind to a halt, it has been lubrication. And you know, yeah, what's getting rid of your lubrication is the heat and the grime, the carbon. You're burning whatever is in your, upper receiver, along your bolt, and you're burning it up, you're burning it out, you're drying it off. So yeah, I would concur with that.
Yeah. So then, if you're going to go run dry, I've seen a lot of people talk about failures, but for the most part, it seems to be not so much caused by actually running dry, but more by running dry and dirty at the same time. Because it seems like people go for hundreds and hundreds of rounds running dry with absolutely zero lubrication without any problem. So I guess my thought would be, really it's not the running dry that causes the failure, but the dirt buildup and the lack of lubrication to help alleviate some of that buildup of carbon and whatnot that causes the failure.
I think that's a cart and horse issue.
True.
I would see that the other way around. And to me, in my experience, if you're running real wet, you got a lot of REM oil, or you got a healthy shot of Militech in there. Running it dirty doesn't have an impact on it, because you're just going to add debris to a coating of lubricant, and it's just going to make it unsightly. But with that lubricant still on the surfaces, you're never going to have it seize up.
Now, Reed, hang on now. You're not supposed to make sense like that. I can't oppose that thought now. Come on, man.
Well, I'm sorry. I will tell you that, when I was in the Marine Corps, I had opportunity to use my forward assist. I had a chamber with dirt and grime and crud in it, and there is no cleaner firearm than a U.S. Marine's firearm when he's in the barracks, and there's no dirtier weapon than when that guy is crawling through the muck and the mire. But I never had a rifle that failed to cycle after basically going through the action drills while we were out there, running exercises. And, I'm sure that there is a lot of anecdotal information from, my day in the military more than 20 years ago, and what has been the case, what people have seen from that day forward. But, frankly, you just didn't have an opportunity to throw some lube in it when you were sitting out there and trying to do things. I'm sure it's a little different today, but that's just my anecdotal piece to the confusing pile of evidence. So instead of it being my first cousin's, second wife that knew somebody, I'll tell you that it was me. I had to use my forward assist. In any case.
That's not a secondhand story. I think maybe one of the first ones that I'm able to hear tonight. Yeah.
So, when it comes to the operating failures, I don't want anybody to think that we're giving short shrift to the idea that operator error can be an issue. But obviously, we espouse everybody go out there, learn your weapon system, learn your manual of arms, get comfortable in all of the elements of operating the rifle. So we're just going to dispense with those because, frankly, everybody starts from the position of never having held one of these, and hopefully we end the days knowing a lot more than we started the day with. And so let's not dwell on any of those and move into our next arena, which we're going to call ammunition failures. So
yeah, we've got several things listed in the show notes, guys, for you guys to go and take a look at. And one of the things that I personally have experienced is still with an issue with steel cased ammo, and I think a lot of people have also experienced that. And I don't even know if I want to get into the whys. Why we have failures. People talk about the lacquer. There's not a problem with lacquer. Well, there's a problem with the shaping of the steel case versus the brass case and the expansions being different. There's a whole gamut of issues here. But my primary failure when it comes to running steel case ammo is just a failure of the bolt to fully cycle, so that I don't get another round loaded. I get an ejection, but I don't get another round loaded. I do not get an ejection, and I don't get another round loaded because the bolt doesn't fully cycle, and I honestly don't know whether that's a problem with the powder load inside the case, or if that's an issue with the steel case. Reed, any thoughts?
I had a rifle that every time I put the steel case stuff in there, it would eject, but it would short stroke, and so the bolt wasn't coming back far enough to strip another round off. And I never got any stovepipes. I never had any double feeds, but it's frustrating when you have a semi-automatic rifle that is basically a bolt gun. And no one likes a single-action bolt gun that has semi-auto printed on, the receiver. So,
but it's still semi-automatic in the fact that just one more step. No, it's not. Never mind. I'm kidding.
I've had other ARs that shoot the stuff like it's nothing. They love it. So I've not shot enough of it to say that I've baked a layer of lacquer into my chamber, so I can't attest to that being a case or a problem in my instance. So, I think that, Anthony and I talked about this before the show. All of these issues are like reloading, they're like optics, they're like any of the hot button issues we've talked about. Everybody has their own experience, everybody has their own opinions, and we respect them all, but we don't know which one's right. We don't know how many of them are combinations of right and wrong, and misinformation or correct information. So as far as the steel cased ammo question goes, I think when it comes down to it, it's a rifle dependent issue. If your rifle eats it up, then by golly, shoot it, because it's just cheap as hell. If your rifle hates it, I'm sorry, you're going to have to move on to other stuff. And, you know, we all understand that, so we all don't think of it as too big a sacrifice.
But Reed, it's cheap. It's cheap. Okay? You know, I'm going to have to figure out a way to shoot this stuff in my Bushmaster. I really am. It's too cheap not to. So, I mean, do you think it's possible that, can you like change it out for maybe a buffer spring that is a different tension, maybe, that would help out a little bit if it's you know, either a failure to extract or a failure to feed or something like that?
You know, I'm sure you could trade out a buffer spring. I'm just not sure that that would solve your problem. The changing out the buffer spring, from my understanding, is just basically going to be something that's going to answer issues of how your bolt is traveling through its cycle, and they're designed to increase the consistency of that movement. So I think what you're going to find are more finely machined and devised buffer springs. So they're made of better materials, they're stiffer, more likely to resist that initial impulse. So you have more time for the gases to develop in the chamber before the rearward forces begin their travel. And I think that that is probably not going to be anything that's going to significantly change the use of steel-cased ammunition in your rifle. And I could be wrong, but I've always thought that it's something you should be cautious with, because at the end of the day, between bolts and bolt carriers and gas tubes and gas blocks and springs and buffers, you can spend a lot of money replacing parts bit by bit and not necessarily find the solution to a problem that can be solved by just switching ammo.
Yeah, that's true. But it's so cheap. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I probably will play with it just a little bit. I've seen a lot of
spring and see what that does for you. In fact, I have a spring suggestion that you ought to use.
Okay.
And, yeah. So I'll send you a link to that.
Cool. Yeah. So, you know, there's other things that we want to talk about too. Ammunition failure. Something that I've had no experience with, thank goodness, would be squib loads. And for those of you guys that aren't completely familiar with what a squib load is, it's when either there's not enough powder or there's no powder inside the cartridge, and the bullet actually gets lodged in the barrel. Yeah, and these can, the squib load itself is typically not a catastrophic failure. You've got the bullets lodged in there, and if you're paying attention to your rifle, everybody says it has a very specific sound. I've heard everybody that I've ever talked to talks about what a squib load sounds like, and if you have a misfire, always keep your rifle pointed down range, 30 seconds, and then figure out what happened. Don't just load another round in and fire. So that's very important to keep that in mind when we're talking about safety and squib loads. But it can turn catastrophic if you go ahead and do load that next round into the chamber and fire, because then you've got a bullet lodged in the chamber and another bullet under pressure coming down the barrel, and that can cause
fury under full pressure.
Yes, maybe the next cartridge was completely done correctly, and you're going to get complete full pressure, and you're going to have a real, possibly explosive issue on your hands, and you can turn into our next category, which we won't get to yet, catastrophic failure. So, squib can be either on reloads, it can be on factory ammunition, where there was just a problem with quality control when the rounds were being manufactured. Any number of different ways that can happen. And like I said, it can either be problems with not enough powder in there, though everything I've read says that it doesn't take just a ton of the powder differences are not huge. At least the bullet should be able to get out of the barrel for the most part. It takes a very small amount of powder in order to cause a squib load if there's going to be powder in there, and that they seem to be mostly from a primer only charge.
Well, just kind of anecdotally, Aguila makes a line of .22 ammunition that basically just has the primer in it. It does not have a charge of powder, and that primer alone is capable of generating enough force to get it going out at about 750 feet per second. Now, in a .22, that's not going to impart a significant amount of force, although I wouldn't want to be shot by that round. However, the reason they do it is so that they can basically generate a subsonic round for you. So, yeah, you're right. It does not take a whole lot of explosive force to propel a bullet into the barrel, far enough for it to lodge itself and cause a problem. But, when you bring up squib loads, I think that you also need to touch on the possibility that you're going to have a cartridge that has a double charge, or in the case of some of the smaller cartridges, a compressed charge, which is probably more powder than you need anyways. And then you're going to have a real problem with powder or pressure spikes because of that. And I think that the likelihood is if that happens, you're going to know it pretty quickly. Not necessarily because of a catastrophic failure in the firearm itself, and that is a possibility. But I think you will be quite aware of the fact that something just happened in your rifle that was not like all of the others, and you should take note. And honestly, I don't think I've heard too many tales of this happening. But I mean, from time to time, you have manufacturers say, hey, we're going to recall a lot of ammo because we're not too comfortable that the quality control necessary for good, safe operation was in place during this stuff.
Yep, I mean that definitely can happen, and your quality control issues really are a big cause of all these different ammunition failures. When you get down into our next area, which is questionable reloads, there are really, in my mind, Reed, correct me if I'm wrong, two different kinds of reloaded ammunition. There's reloads done by manufacturers, and there's reloads done by individuals. A lot of times the individual is reloading his own, or he's reloading and then reselling it to others. And you got two different possible levels of quality, and it could go either way. I mean, you could have an individual that is a master at reloading, and everything they ever sell you is going to be the best thing in the world, and the same thing from a company, or vice versa. It can be bad on either side. So you've got to be really careful with the experience level and the known quality levels of your ammunition when you're doing reloads, because the last thing you want is end up with one of these other issues. Either you've got undercharged, overcharged, and you're going to end up with squibs, or you're going to end up with double charging, something like that. It can be a very bad experience and can lead to catastrophic failures. And all you got to do is what did we Google earlier, Reed? AR-15 goes kaboom.
Yeah, there are a couple of kaboom examples that are really
I just wanted to see some pictures of some exploded AR-15s, and that was kind of interesting.
I think the thing that really is nice is that despite the number of possible ways you can screw up your rifle, very few of them are capable of ultimately resulting in such a dramatic failure that you could be seriously injured. Now, of course, when that comes to pass, the likelihood is that you're going to have something fail in a way that's going to ruin your rifle, and you're not going to be able to use it again. But push comes to shove, being able to come back to the range the next day is more than I think a good ending there.
Yep,
So,
I would agree.
That's a testament to the platform, but certainly, I think that's something that would encourage us, or should encourage us all, to use the platform and not be afraid of the things that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, every single failure that I've looked at in researching for the show, because obviously I haven't had any real serious failures with my rifle, but all the ones that I looked at when I was researching for the show were really just about people having catastrophic failures. The rifle explodes while it's right up next to their face, and the most that they've gotten really is just a problem with a little bit of shrapnel from the rifle, maybe in their skin or something like that. I haven't seen. I'm sure there are plenty of cases where someone has gotten critically injured, or in worst case scenario had a death from that. But everything I have read has been minor injuries. Thank goodness.
Well, I think that one of the last things we ought to touch on, although very lightly, because we've actually had a whole show about it, there is a strong body of information that suggests that there is a potential failure point with ammunition because of the switch between 5.56 versus 223 ammunition. Of course, the 5.56 is military ammunition, and it's loaded in a very specific way, but the 223 can be loaded in a way that could cause, well, no, I guess the 5.56 can cause the pressure spike in 223 chambers. So it's something that we want to be aware of, but obviously, once again, everybody has their own anecdotal stories and their belief on the issue.
Yeah, I've read all kinds of different things over the last couple of years. I've done a little bit of research. People firing 5.56 in 223 barrels without any problems, but I personally would not do that. So,
and that's why I tend to go with 5.56 chambers. Although, as my gunsmith has informed me, just because it says 5.56 doesn't mean it is.
Ooh.
So you might want to be careful there.
I think my Bushy's okay, so I hope so.
Let's talk next about what I think is probably the real crux of a show like this. And these are the catastrophic failures. These are the big kabooms that we all are reluctant to have happen, and these are the things that I find very few people that have actually witnessed one. So we'll start off at the top, and what we're basically going to start off with are barrel bulges. So this, I think, is, Anthony, what you were alluding to when we're talking about squib loads. This is the ultimate destructive, catastrophic failure for having a squib load and not being able to recognize its existence before throwing more lead down the barrel. What ends up happening is the pressure of the subsequent rounds traveling to the barrel and meeting the obstruction will actually bulge the barrel at that point of obstruction in an attempt to, I guess, dissipate the extreme forces that are acting on that blockage. And the barrel bulge itself is something that can ultimately go to the next stage and create a split in your barrel, which itself is pretty catastrophic. So, have you had any experience with the idea of a barrel bulge?
I've seen some pictures online, and I'll be honest, the first time after I replaced my gas block, that's one of the things that's in my head is what's going to happen. I obviously know that's not likely because I replaced the gas block, but I still was like, oh, is this going to blow up in my face? So, I mean, I had seen enough pictures, I was worried about it. Erroneously, yeah, but still.
Well, when it comes down to it, the barrel bulge, I think, is something that you can avoid if, as Anthony said, that squib load is something that you can detect with your normal situational awareness when you're sitting there on the rifle and using it, and it doesn't do what you're expecting it to do. I would not think that it's a problem at all to pull your bolt after opening up your rifle to just see if there's a clear barrel. If you can look through your barrel, then no worries. But if you can't, then I think it's time to start thinking about pulling that out of the rotation for your day at the range.
Yep. I mean, if you guys want to see a barrel bulge, this is a 9mm I've got on screen here right now, but you can kind of tell where the barrel is deformed there. So that's on AR-15barrels.com where I pulled that image. But you can see it can really kind of make that metal expand.
Yeah, that creates a pretty big difference in the way your day's going to end. So, I think the next big issue kind of is a direct result of another one of your ammo issues. If you do some reloading and you end up having a round that's improperly crimped, they call it a telescoping round, and it creates some pressure in your chamber that can result in a failure at that point, because the pressure spike is basically confined to that very narrow range of your barrel where your barrel extension, your chamber is. So one of the big things to remember is that all of these ammunition failures have the potential to become pretty significant critical failures or catastrophic failures. So, Anthony, have you had any experience with our next failure?
Extractor failures. You mean just like a failure to extract there, Reed? Is that I think in the pistol terminology we were always taught failure to extract. So, I'm trying to remember, because I know I said earlier both different ways, and honestly, it's been way too long since I've been to the range. And I didn't fire that much of that steel cased ammo. I cannot remember if it was a failure to extract, if the casing was still inside. I think it must have come out. I think the casing must have done, and the bullet just didn't cycle and didn't failure to load the next round. So I don't think I have had any personal issues with failure to extract with my rifle, no.
Well, one of the other ways that this can become a very dramatic and critical catastrophic failure is when your extractor actually shears. And that, as a failure, is really kind of the end of your, once again, useful application of that rifle to what it is you're doing at the range. So, I tell you, you've never had an extractor failing.
No. It's a little bit different than a failure to extract. An extractor failure, yeah, sorry. My brain is not working sometimes.
No, that's all right. I think that of all of the catastrophic failures, it's probably the one that's easiest to stomach, easiest to deal with. And frankly, I'd say it's the cheapest. Your extractor's a pretty nominal piece, cost-wise, by comparison to having an entire barrel deformed because of some critical failure. But extractor failures, I think, are probably more common than a lot of the other failures, because the point of failure really is a high-stress, high-fatigue point, and it is, I think, on a part that has a much shorter useful life than most of the other pieces.
So one day I should expect to see an extractor failure, huh?
Well, if you get enough chances to go to the range.
Yeah, well, that's we'll see.
I'm thinking that JW is going to have an extractor failure before either of us have one.
Yep. Oh, we just hope maybe he'll have a video camera around and we'll see what happens.
I'm sure he will. I don't know if he'll share that video with us, but I think the next big issue that I want to talk about are the bolt failures. And I think that I personally have a good friend. I've mentioned him before. He's a mentor of mine. And he had a bolt crack across the bolt face, and he indicated that he was shooting pretty much standard ammunition. That there were no reloads, nothing that was, high pressure, anything that would cause one to believe that the failure was due to a failure in the ammunition. So I want to point out that, because you have a piece that is in direct contact with the component of your rifle creating all the forces, I mean, obviously that bolt is structured in a way to where when it locks up, it is keeping those pressures at bay for their ultimate use. It's going to experience some forces that obviously can crack it if it's cracked, but that's the point. These pieces can fail because they're high stress pieces. So the issue I would think in that instance is one of making sure you're buying the highest quality product you can buy.
And if you guys want to see what a bolt failure looks like, you should be able to see it on screen. You see that there, Reed?
Yeah, I do. And this, I think, was something that resulted, what was this? A mixture of pistol and rifle powder in a cartridge that should not have had any pistol powder in it.
Yep, you got it.
Obviously. Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
I was just going to say it's almost along the lines of your double charge. There's just too much force.
Yeah, and I think you're going to find that the pistol powder is probably a very fast-burning powder, far faster than the rifle could have handled. At least that's my understanding. So, another kind of failure you're going to find would be a crack at the cam pin. So, obviously, in this picture, we see that cam pin kind of, I guess it's not in its proper position, but certainly across that structure, you're going to see some of your breaks happen at that weak spot, because along the whole surface of the bolt, that's probably the weakest part of the bolt. If improper forces are applied, I think that's another high likelihood place for it to crack.
Okay, Reed, so newbie question.
All right.
Can you see my mouse there on the picture?
I can.
Okay. Which part is the cam pin? Is it
Now, if you'll move it rearward.
Rearward. Okay, I'm moving rearward here.
Keep moving.
Keep moving rearward.
It's that round cylinder that's just below the gas key.
Okay, is it this part that turns?
The big open tube at the top is the gas key. That's
right.
The hand pin.
Okay, so that's the piece that you have to turn in the correct way for the bolt to move.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So, that's going to be the piece that is going to, I think, be the weakest structural component of the whole bolt. And so, between the crack across the face of the bolt, which basically is where the most force acting on that bolt is going to be expressed, and that place where the cam pin enters through the bolt, which I think is the weakest structural component of the bolt, those two places I think have the highest likelihood of having some piece of failure occur at some point in time. So, obviously, these things can happen because you have a poor quality bolt or a bolt that has some inherent problem due to its metallurgy, some manufacturing flaw, whatever the case may be. And of course, on the other end of that spectrum are failures that occur because the forces applied to that bolt are so extreme, they're just going to cause the failure. So when it comes down to it, I think bolt failures are probably going to be your second most common, most seen failure behind an extractor failure. So the last piece we put up here was the idea of a round cooking off, firing out of battery. So, Anthony, tell me what your basic thought is on that.
Well, again, this is something I've never experienced, and really based on the research that I've done.
Anthony, before you go on,
yes,
I think the listeners would, or I guess the viewers would love to see the face of our co-host Anthony instead of the face of a bolt. There we go. All right, take your mute button off now.
I'll get this right in a second. I think that that bolt face is quite a bit more attractive than I am, so they might prefer that. But hopefully, you guys are watching and now you can see me, and hopefully, it's not too bad. But anyway, everything that I've read about firing out a battery, I don't know. It all seems to be secondhand. I can't find anybody that reports firsthand experience with a rifle that has fired out a battery. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure that there are conditions in which it does happen. Everybody seems to agree that there's one of two things that can cause a firing out a battery, and if the firing pin gets stuck forward, then if you put your rifle try to put your rifle in a battery, that firing pin comes down on the primer while you're trying to go into battery, which will prevent it from going into battery, but could fire the round anyway. Or, but that seems like you have some people who say there's no way that could ever happen mechanically, and you have some people who say that yes, it could happen. So I'm not sure which is the case myself. I'm going to have to pull my bolt and play with it some and see if I can get a little bit better understanding of that. And then the other condition is in which you have a bulging primer, so the primer's sticking too far back, and so while you're releasing the bolt to go into battery, I guess they call it maybe a slam fire almost. Yeah. I guess the face of the bolt makes contact with that primer and causes it to fire if you have a bulging primer. Again, I haven't found anybody who says it's actually happened to them, but
right. Well, I would say that anecdotally, the third hypothesis would be around cooking off in an extremely overheated chamber before your bolt has an opportunity to close. Now, I don't know what that looks like, nor do I know if that is even remotely possible. But, I mean, I think it would be pretty hard for your firing pin to jam forward in a way that would cause it to strike your primer before your bolt closes home. And, of course, a slam fire, once again, that's a difficult issue as well. So, firing out of battery, I don't know that you're likely to see that happen, but I think the ultimate result would very much be like any of the things that result from the forces that would cause bolts to crack in chambers and barrel extensions to balloon out and fail. So I think that would be the end result of potentially firing out a battery. Although I would say that one of the things that we didn't talk about being a subsequent result of any of these things is the fact that you're either going to lose your upper receiver or your lower receiver or both because of some of these more catastrophic failures. But I think that pretty much covers a lot of the big things that people have seen or people have reported having seen out there in the world. So I don't know that we can really beat this horse any more tonight. But Anthony did go out and poll the FRN hosts to kind of see what they've seen. So let's run through this real quick and kind of see the issues they've had, and kind of let's throw this out there for the listeners and the viewers to see. So, Anthony, go ahead and get started with Robbie.
Yeah, so Robbie writes back to me when we asked for one of our FRN hosts and said, the only failure I've ever had was an ejector on a Smith & Wesson 1522, which I have one of those, by the way. It broke off, and I took it back to a local distributor. They shipped it off to Smith & Wesson, and they shipped it back and fixed it with absolutely no charge whatsoever. So there you go. You got a broken ejector, or ejector failure.
Let's see. TJ, he had a carbine that hated steel ammo. Let's see. Aaron Krieger. Let's see. He had a forward assist chip, or I guess the tip of his forward assist broke off and jammed his bolt. That's an interesting failure. I don't think that's one that you're likely to see very.
Yeah, that was a little different.
We know Aaron's always providing really obscure things that happen to him. He may not have the luck of the Irish. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah, and so then, don't know exactly who this was. Somebody from the Power Factor show, and I'm guessing it was not. Let's see, who was the last guy down here? I think Doug Hartley was Power Factor, I think. But somebody from Power Factor wrote into us and said not to use pistol powder in your 223. Saw a friend kaboom 2 rifles in one 3-gun stage, his primary and a friend's backup. Now that sucks. I mean, oh man. I guess those were obviously reloads.
Well, that's the big critical failure you showed. That was pistol powder.
Yep.
Well, let's see. JW saw a firing pin, retaining pin. That's the little cotter pin in there. Sheared into 3 pieces and was floating around in the channel and caused the bolt carrier group to lock up. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. It's kind of one of those non-working parts. You must have really been using that rifle hard for the cotter pin in there to break into 3 pieces.
Well, JW and all his shooting and stuff, he's going to run across who knows what.
Yeah, I think we need to talk to that guy about sharing the wealth and giving all us an opportunity to get out to the range.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Anyway, so let's see. Ryan McCad, he doesn't have any black rifle failures because they're so wonderful. So he says, black rifles fail? No way. I had an MP5 SD shear off my case head one time. It's black, and it's a rifle, sort of. So we'll give Ryan his voice in the AR world since he's such a big pistol guy. Let's see. Gene writes in the only, he let us know, the only AR-15 failure he has is the failure to convince his wife that he needs to get one.
That's my favorite failure out of everything.
I think, Gene, we're going to try to have a show on one time about how to justify to your wife everything you need to justify to get yourself an AR.
Yep.
I haven't figured out exactly all the tricks because I haven't figured out how to convince my wife each time, but we'll get together. We'll help you out.
Yeah. Now I have to say that whenever I put this out to all of the hosts, I did say I would award points. So this may be. Has this ever happened before on the podcast, Reed? Have we ever awarded points before?
I don't think we have. This is
so
important to me.
This is breaking new ground for us. So now I'm going to give Gene 100 points for that because it made me laugh.
All right. So Ryan Cross says he had a gas tube shear right at the port inside the gas block. He said he didn't know it until he could slide the tube back and forth about an inch. That's always a pretty good indicator. Oh, well, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. He says he had a fire out of battery.
I stand corrected.
And jammed up the lugs into the barrel sleeve. Said he had to beat it like it was late to dinner just to free the bolt and cracked the chamber in the process. That's why he shoots a bolt action now. Well, we'll have to talk to Ryan about, proper love and care that one has to express to his AR to get it to cooperate.
Yeah, and his had to be like he was late to dinner. That got a chuckle, so that's about 25 points. Yeah, that's about 25 points. So Gene's in the lead right now.
Well, Devin lets us know that he actually loaded a 9mm laser ammo cartridge in his AR, and it got stuck. So He says that he and his brother and his father helped him out a bit, and they got it fixed, and everybody walked away okay. But I can imagine that might be a little frustrating, getting something jammed up into your chamber, not knowing whether you're going to get it out.
Reed, that didn't sound right.
Well, okay. I don't know how I'm going to go back and fix that, so I'm just going to let it die. Jeremy wrote in that a buddy stuck 5.56 in an old 223 chambered AR and blew the side out of the upper. He said it split like a tomato can. So, once again, there's the issue of the military ammo and the 223 chamberings causing problems. Whatever it is that does that damage. This is probably one of the few times I've heard anybody say that he was that close to the point of it happening. Although it's still a buddy that it happened to.
It's still, anecdotal, like you said.
Although Jeremy's a good source. We'll have to see if his buddy can provide proof, because I want to get this documented.
Pictures or it didn't happen, right?
All right, so Michael C. is our ever-popular competition podcast host, and he gives us quite a lot. So he starts off with his first failure. He fell out of a Humvee. He landed on the magazine. So there was a double feed on an M4. He got one rifle and the rifle jammed. Magazine bent when he fell on the rifle. His full weight, his IBA, and the rest of his gear was a little too much for it.
Yeah, that poor little magazine never stood a chance.
So he gets to cover, and he was able to rip out the magazine, rack a couple of times, insert a new mag, and he was up and running again. So then he switched to PMags, and everything was good. But he says, surprisingly, his CQ/T survived the fall. So I guess that's a testament to that. So let's see, what else? Jams due to lack of lubrication or bad magazines and competitions. Let's see. He says worst failure he saw was an idiot who didn't check his magazines before loading blanks. Loaded his blanks on top of a live round. Everything was fine for about 27 rounds. Then the bullet from the live round hit the BFA, and there was a big kaboom. So luckily he was wearing ballistic goggles and helmet and gloves. And for anybody that doesn't know, the blanks don't have enough power to cycle the rifle. So you basically put on a big red or safety orange or weirdly colored device on the end of your barrel, which basically plugs the hole and creates an obstruction at the end of your barrel. So I'm sure you can all imagine what happens when a bullet hits an obstruction going full speed. Let's see, funniest failure, some poor schmuck who built an AR-15 space gun on a Colt lower, the heavy 26-inch bull barrel, and the rest of the crap that goes on them was too much for the cheap aluminum. He said he was shooting standing, and the whole upper receiver just kind of crumpled. I guess that's like having a big heavy steel barrel on the end of an aluminum can. It just kind of just crumpled there.
That's bad. That would be a good thing to have a picture of.
Let's see. And then he says, of course, there's builder error. His buddy that bought a barrel for $50, and it wouldn't cycle, and it wouldn't cycle, and it wouldn't cycle. So he takes it to Mike C., who realizes after examining it that it doesn't have a gas port drilled in the barrel.
Nah, that's priceless.
That's a priceless failure there. All right, well, let's take a look at the last one, Anthony, and why don't you go over this one?
Yeah, it's from Doug. He says that at the USPSA Multi-Gun Nationals this year, I used some 5.56 instead of my regular 223. It's a JP upper with JP Elmos lightened bolt carrier, JP low mass buffer, the red one, and has a 20-inch barrel and adjustable gas block. The gun runs perfect with 223 ammo, but during the match he tried 5.56, Winchester 5.56, Q31-31, and the gun would frequently not pick up the next round. One stage he really cratered because it was bolt action most of the stage. Sounds like me and my steel ammo. Later in the match, he borrowed some 223 from another shooter, and it ran fine. So he actually linked a video to his malfunction. So if you guys want to see the difference in some of what ammo can do for you, turn your, like Reed said, turn your semi-auto into a bolt action. You can see Doug in action on YouTube at this link.
Well, I'm going to have to see that because I'm trying to figure out how that switch would work, unless it was just something inherent in the batch, or maybe the 223 was a little hotter. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ponder that because that's an interesting result.
Yep, it does sound kind of strange.
Well, so that's basically AR failures in a nutshell. You know, the hosts that have chimed in, they have a lot of trigger time on the AR, and so I think that really we've scratched the surface on what a lot of the common things you're going to see out there are. As far as ways to prevent them, I think it comes down to diligence. I mean, you have to be diligent. You have to be aware of what's going on. So that means you're paying attention. And if you're doing that, I think you're 90% of the way there. Just having that awareness when you're using the rifle is probably going to be enough to prevent any one of these minor catastrophes from escalating into a pretty significant one.
Yep. I mean, that's what people usually say is, you got to make sure that you treat your rifle with respect and keep it lubed and cleaned properly, and it will be your friend, and you'll get a good feel for how it works, and you'll know when it's not feeling quite right, when it's ailing or a little bit sick. And what's the rifleman's creed? This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
Yep.
That's the start of it, and that's very, very true. Every rifle is an individual, and your rifle is yours. You have to take care of it.
Well, you know what the other creed is, right?
Uh-oh, what?
This is my rifle, this one's my gun, this one's for shooting, this one's for fun.
Alrighty then.
All right, so let's turn to a little bit of feedback. And before we get started with this week's feedback, I want to let everybody know that once again, we are having an AR-15 giveaway. And we are seeing a lot of really nice feedback coming through iTunes, coming through Stitcher, all really good stuff. I do want to caution all of our readers that the written feedback requirement on iTunes means that you cannot just give us a rating, you cannot just give us stars, you must go in and write something down, because that's the only way that iTunes reports to us what your name is. If you just give us stars, you are anonymous, and we will not be able to draw your name out of the bin and send that rifle to you. And I'd hate for your winning entry to be disqualified because we can't find you. So that's my my handy little shout out on that point tonight. Let's start with Ian K, who writes in, "Hi Reed, this week you talked about trends in rifle and ammunition pricing. I wanted to pass along to you a good series that the Firearms blog has been doing on a regular basis. And of course, I think we linked to that in the show notes, didn't we?
We linked to one. I think it was on Firearms blog. I'm not 100% sure. I have to take a look.
The Firearms blog. They've been charting ammunition trends. So he points out that it's nice to see everything getting back to pre-12 levels. I think we both agree on that. He says, next, I know we all like to shoot the heavier stuff in 5.56, but it's still rather spendy. He says, well, IMI, which is Israeli Military Industries, has released a true Mark 262 clone at a pretty good price. He says, take care and we'll talk soon. Well, let's see, where was he? It was Widner's Sporting Goods that he sent me a link to. So obviously, if you are interested in going to Widner's, they have 1,000-round cases. And, 77 grain Mark 262 stuff, that's still a very good price. It's 75 cents a round. But when you're seeing Black Hills go for $1.50 to as much as $2.50, 75 cents a round is a really good price point. So Anthony, why don't you take Miles?
Sure. Real quick before I do that, I did look it up, our link, and our link was not to the Firearms blog. It was to Slick Guns, an article that was on Slick Guns. So I'll have to check out that Firearms blog and see if they have any more up-to-date information, because the Slick Guns information, I think, was a couple of years old.
Okay.
So Miles writes in, listening to your most recent episode, and I heard you talking about your lack of information on the new Colt 223 caliber ammo being brought into the country, and that's the steel case stuff we talked about. Mm-hmm. He says, I have shot it. I love it. It's the only steel case ammo I trust somewhat for practice. The zinc coating appears to be much better than that horrible lacquer or polymer used by Brown Bear and Wolf, respectively. The powder doesn't seem to leave as much carbon and other junk in the gun as most of the varieties of steel-cased ammo, and he's never had any malfunctions of any kind, which is awesome. He's more than he can say about every other flavor of steel-cased ammo he's used, including Hornady. It's also 62 grain, which I know, Reed, you're a fan of 62.
I love that stuff.
Yep. So my most recent build that uses a PSA 1-7 twist pencil barrel shoots it better than any practice ammo I have on hand. I wonder if he means including his brass stuff. I haven't shot groups with it yet at the long range, but at 50 feet, groups at what, 1/5 of 2 MOA? Is that what he's saying there?
I think he was probably meaning 1/2, but I
1/2 inch. 1/2 inch. Yeah, okay. 1/2 inch or so.
2 MOA.
Yeah. And he can hit a bowling ball size target about 100 yards without really trying, which is not too bad for me anyway. In relation to Mark's question and the use of 9mm in short barrels, he says, ever think of doing an episode or an episode segment about the SIG brace? I have a Century Arms version of said implement on the Zastava PAP AK pistol, and after a couple of minor modifications, it turns it from a ridiculous toy into an awesome weapon. What's that SIG brace? You familiar with that, Reed?
I am, and here's what it is. The pistol ARs are not allowed to have anything that closely approximates a stock, because that makes it a short-barreled rifle, and they're not allowed to be short-barreled rifles without having the tax stamp in hand and ATF approval and the machining or the engraving on the lower receiver. So SIG was able to manufacture a device which basically it mimics in some way the shape of a collapsible stock, but it is in fact designed to Velcro around your forearm. And so the engineers at SIG sent off all of the appropriate paperwork to get the armorers and experts at the NFA to evaluate it and make a determination about its legal status, when they said it wasn't a stock and you could sell it for installation on AR pistols. Excuse me. So what you have is something that will look like a short-barreled rifle with a collapsible stock, but that is not a short-barreled rifle. It is, in fact, a legal pistol that does not have a stock. It has an arm brace. Now, I am not going to touch on why it is that people like them, because that's not really any of my business. However, It is something that I do think we have some interest in following up on. We're going to, of course, we have a busy, busy summer. We're trying to fill the roster, and so, every piece helps. But SIG is definitely something that is on our horizon, and I do think that we're going to put it in a show.
Very cool. He finishes up saying, however, since poor Mark is in New York, if he were to be seen using one at a range, he would probably have a SWAT team swinging through his window like Tarzan. I don't know if New York State or any state has outlawed the brace yet, but I'm not optimistic. So, yep. As far as we know right now, they are still legal, but please check your local laws and make sure you abide by all of those, please.
Yep. Well, let's see. Our next one is in by Jesse. Jesse says, I have one question about this week's show. I am installing an A1 front sight on a rifle that has a flat top upper, but I am going to put a Colt removable handle with a rear sight built into it. I was thinking that I would be able to use the standard A1 front sight post. Thought the extended post was to make up for the rear sight sitting so much lower on the flat top upper. Is my thinking on track? FYI, I'm building this rifle for my wife. She wanted an A1 stock and handguard, so I decided to go with pencil thin barrel and an A1 front sight base. Says I got a Spikes combat trigger, and all I need to get now is the barrel and brake. The upper and lower will be more modern, but I think it will still look pretty good. He said construction helped me a lot because I was able to show different styles to my wife and get her feedback before I bought parts. He says I learned a lot listening to you guys. Thanks and keep up the great work. Jesse, here's the thing. And I've already written to Jesse, so I'm just going to kind of tell this for our listeners who might be having a similar question. The issue is this, and I'm making some assumptions here. I'm thinking that he's talking about a forged front sight base, and that he is talking about something that's going to be on a 20-inch barrel. The issue is this. There are basically two different front sight bases that are out in the world today. One is marked with an F, one is not. The ones that are marked with an F are capable of being combined with a flat top upper receiver. So if you take the one marked with an F and combine it with the flat top upper receiver, you do not need to change your front sight post. It will work in conjunction with your Colt carry handle. Now here's the problem. If you do not have a front sight base marked with an F that is on your barrel, regardless of the length, what you have is a front sight base that is shorter than the F-marked front sight base. So that means when you're trying to get your sights in alignment, you're going to be way off. You're going to have to do quite a bit of adjusting to that front sight post to get it up to where it needs to be. And it's actually, the measured is 0.040 inches. The standard front sight base is 0.270 inches in height. The front sight base that you need for that awkward configuration is a 0.310 inch long front sight base. Now that includes the measurement from the bottom of the threaded component, the threaded barrel of the sight, all the way to the top.
And thus we see the very deep depth of knowledge coming from Reed. That's a lot of numbers, Reed.
I have a strange ability to just soak in information and retain it forever.
You and my wife are a lot alike.
Well, I hope not in every way.
No, just memories like crazy.
So here's the thing. When it comes down to it, the only time that you have this issue is when you have a flat top upper and your front sight base does not have the F mark on it. So I think if you do a Google search, you can find examples of the bases and where that F is going to be marked, what it's going to look like, so that you can have some reasonable assurance that when you find it, you are actually looking at what you think you are looking at. But, you know, I think that that's going to basically solve any issues here. So the really issue is, does it have the F or does it not have the F? Is it a flat top upper receiver or is it the old A2 style upper receiver? And there you go. So, Jesse, let us know how the build goes. Obviously, if you figured out a way to make your wife happy while you have just caught black rifle disease, we have a lot of listeners that want to know what your secret is. I think that pretty much wraps it up. Anthony,
Yep.
Anything to add before we start heading down the path of closure tonight?
No, I just think if you guys have stories that you'd like to send in to us, pictures, videos, anything like that about failures you might have had, or any other questions you might have, please let us know. You can always send them to feedback at AR-15podcast.com, or you can give them to us over on Facebook at the Firearms Radio Network on Facebook, too.
And I will add, as much as we'd like to hear those stories, I don't want to hear my buddy told me about his brother-in-law. I want you to write me the story that says, yeah, I know this guy. His name is John. This is what happened to him because I was standing right next to him when it did. So send me those stories. We'd like to hear them.
Yep. So definitely appreciate you guys coming. And as a reminder, there are 3 ways to enter our podcast, AR-15 podcast rifle giveaway. Brownells is sponsoring that, so make sure you check out our Brownells information. But you can go to AR15podcast.com/winner and join the FRN mailing list, and that's 1 entry. You can also enter the giveaway by leaving written feedback. Again, it must be written feedback on iTunes, not just as rating, but you have to leave a written review. And the same thing for Stitcher. You can leave a written review on Stitcher. So those are your 3 ways to get in and enter that rifle giveaway, and that is through September 30th. You can send any questions, comments, stories, anything else you might have to us at feedback@ar15podcast.com. And you can send us a recorded voicemail, and yes, it does work. Works really wonderfully well to the SpeakPipe plugin on the right-hand side of the AR-15 podcast website. If you'd like, if you're not watching us on Google Plus Live right now, or not watching the live feed over on YouTube, which we are announcing now, by the way, so make sure you like FRN over on Facebook or like us on the Google Plus page. You can subscribe and listen to the AR-15 podcast in audio-only form for free, like you may be doing right now, at firearmsradio.tv/iTunes. And again, make sure you can leave us an iTunes review, because not only does that get you an entry into the giveaway, but also helps us place the show higher in searches for potential listeners. And you can share your pics with us on Flickr at flickr.com/groups/Black Rifle. We'd love to have pictures from all of our different listeners and make sure we've got that information up there. We can take a look and share between all of us. And again, you can follow us on Google Plus or watch us live, like right now, at firearmsradio.tv/plus, or you can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/firearmsradio. Follow FRN on Facebook, and again, please do follow us on FRN on Facebook. We're going to do a lot more with requesting comments and feedbacks before the show starts from our listeners and our Facebook followers. So go to facebook.com/firearmsradio to like us on the Facebook page. You can check out all the other podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network. And don't forget to use our Brownells affiliate link. Again, they are sponsoring this rifle giveaway, so we really encourage you to help us out, because they're helping us out. Help them out because they are helping us out. And you can get that link at ar15podcast.com/parts. And last, as always, everybody uses Amazon. So whenever you decide to go to Amazon, instead of going directly to Amazon, head over to firearmsradio.tv and click on one of the Amazon affiliate banners that are listed there on the website, and we get a very small, little teeny tiny portion. It doesn't cost you anything at all.
Well, that sounds like a great deal. So here's something that I want all of the listeners to know. We have been getting a lot of great feedback and commentary from you all on iTunes. I want you to know that everyone here on the show, we are humbled by everything that you left us information about. And it really it has inspired me to remind you that the reason that we are able to put a show on that lives up to your expectations of us is because you each respond with feedback and give us insights and give us commentary that help us fine-tune the things that we're doing here. We want to encourage you to continue to do so, and if you haven't written in before, write in, let us know what you're doing, let us know what your questions are, let us know what your comments are, because it is really only because of you guys that we are still here, that we've gotten any better, and that we're able to do anything at all. So when push comes to shove, if you guys have a chance to go in and leave us some piece of feedback, that will help us get better in everything we do. So I think with that, I'd like to encourage you all to just bear with us, let us get better, and help us do the job that we're doing by being a part of that little piece. So with that, everybody, we want to wish you a good week, and have a good night.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.